everyone comes into those moments where it's like burn the ship or not, and we'd already had one of those burn the ship moments in 2019 when we had to, like sink or swim. And I mortgaged my fourplex, and we took on cabbage into it loans, 30% interest rates. And we climbed through it one time before a cash crunch, but we had this huge pipeline. We knew we were going to be able to, get through this. There was no way out of this one. And so we had to make that freaking really hard call to just say, okay, like if you're not committed and I'm not committed to like really come up with this money to like keep it going, then we got to close doors.
Welcome to Elevate Utah, Utah's #1 growth podcast. I'm Court Brady, and Carlos Souza, my co-host, is at a conference in Las Vegas. He was super bummed to miss this one. Today we have one of my favorite people. I've been so pumped for this episode, Kyle Larsen. Pumped to have you, Kyle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Kyle is going to share an incredible story with us that I've been encouraging him and begging him to share for quite some time. And this came on the heels of you sharing this story in front of the big public area. Where were we? In a big garage with like 50 classic cars and a couple supercars.
We were at an EO event, and we had Ben Hardy there.
Ben Hardy, that's
Dr.
right.
Ben Hardy. And he was just about to detail his the science of impossible goals. And it was good. So
Kyle Larsen is the current president of the entrepreneurial organization and the co-founder of Skyline Solar, which went from 0 to 35 million in the course of 5 years.
6
years.
Yeah.
And then with about 65% of all the other solar companies went out of business a year ago.
We're actually still winding crap down, but made the decision in August to shut doors.
And I've had so many conversations thinking about your process. We've had Lonnie Rubin on the podcast, thinking about his process. They had a corporate gift box company, and Amazon came out with a small tweak where they started doing corporate gift boxing and destroyed, just one small tweak took out his company that was larger than Aspen. And so I've thought so many times of if I just would have chose a different industry or different, like the outcome of Aspen would have been or could have been so different based on these macro changes that have taken place.
And they're macro changes you can't ever like anticipate, right? Yeah. Like you choose your field and you're dedicated to it, and then you adjust along the way, and then sometimes you can't adjust out of them, and you got to pivot and do something different.
So you have so many golden nuggets to share with us. So we're going to talk through your entrepreneurial journey, the highs and the lows, and then I want to hear what's next, some of the biggest learnings that have taken place, and where your mindset's at for what you want to go and tackle in this next chapter of life.
Sounds good. Where do you want me to start, like inception?
I want to know,
like where we started
and Scott get this first Skyline Solar. Why don't you just tell us about the name Skyline?
So we thought of like 100 different names before that, and Scott and I both went to the Skyline High School.
Skyline Eagles, baby.
And so we're like, let's just call it Skyline Solar. And then come to find out, like after we had started or whatever, there's like 2 other Skyline Solars, one in California, one in New Jersey.
Was it ever a problem or not?
Which became a problem later on as we got bigger, and we're like, fetch, like we should probably should rebrand because we don't own like a trademark on this. And we went to like look trademark, which means spend time creating the right name at the beginning. But it was fine for what we did, and then
So you and Scott launched this
2016.
2016. Before that, you had done door to door.
Yeah, we did door to door sales. Like he and I became good friends. He trained me he spent like a week with me knocking doors, selling alarms, and then he went to a different company after that summer. We stayed in touch. I spent four years at the University of Utah, and I was still doing alarms. And then he'd gotten into solar, And then every year he's just like, dude, you got to try this. You got to try this, try this. And I was like, I swear I'm done with door to door when I graduate. And then they talked me into, him and my other buddy that I met that summer talked me into starting an office in Vegas. And then
A solar office.
And
Were you married at the time?
Yeah, I was married. And so my wife, as soon as I graduated, we went down to Vegas, and we were planning on being there for like 5 years because it was just like awesome. Got a huge team built up pretty quickly, and we were just freaking selling and slinging, and it was so fun. And then that utility shut solar down. It like met the cap or whatever. And at the time we were selling with this company called, I'm blanking on it, but they had just sold to Sun Edison, which was the largest renewable energy company in the world at the time. And Sun Edison acquires Evolve. Evolve Solar was the name. And so they acquire Evolve, and then Sun Edison, when we had to leave Vegas, I moved my team to Sacramento for a few months because we had to figure out where to sell. And then they announced that they're trying to buy Vivint Solar. And so they're going through that process. Meanwhile, none of our stuff's getting installed because they've just acquired us. And then they had used partners, whereas Solar City, we were selling for Solar City. They were just all in-house. And so the installs were happening. We were getting paid in our overrides. And so like we weren't getting our overrides. We weren't getting installs. So Scott and I are like, we got to move back to the mothership, which was back home in Utah. And we got to like start getting these stuff installed so we can get paid. So we do that. And then literally a month moving in to home, Sun Edison declares bankruptcy. And we're like, all of our teams are out in their areas that we just established and just disappeared. So we're like, fetch, what do we do? Like, we didn't like the lease model of what we were selling, and because like loans and everything were coming up. And so we found this other small company out of Provo that we started working for, helped them. So we started learning this new model, like the setter closer model. And then 5 months into it, this is July 2016, we're 5 months into this partnership. They'd promised equity and whatever. And they're like, sorry guys, like this deal that we made with you guys is not going to work out. Like, we just don't want to do it anymore. And we thought it was just because it's probably going to be way too expensive, you know, but we were like devastated. I just had my firstborn.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what the freak do we do? We just built 2 teams for him, one in Cedar City and one in Idaho Falls, like setting teams. So like there was like 5 or 6 canvassers that would go out and knock doors, set leads. And they're like, we don't want those teams. You guys can have them. And we're like, okay, so I guess we're starting a company, and we have 12 employees that we start with. So we literally started a company and we already had 12 employees. So we're like, how do we make payroll? Like, what do we do?
Oh my gosh.
So Scott and I each put in $3,500. This is what we started. This is what we started the company with, $3,500 each. So it's like $7,000. And we pay them. He and I just take turns going down to Cedar City and up to Idaho Falls closing deals until we could find closers. And so like I'm literally dragging my wife and daughter. We're freaking going crazy on the home front, and we just started this in our unfinished basement. So we're like, we have like 2 employees at home, like an accountant guy and a marketing guy, and then we're hitting the road, driving back to and from, closing deals while we try and hire closers. It was a crazy time. But we just didn't pay ourselves for 6 months, and we funded the company that way. So like we, at the time, Solar would pay, they call it like a certain per watt. So they would give us like an upfront money once we sold these deals, and that's kind of how we just funded the company from the beginning. And it was wild. So like we had 2 teams going almost immediately, and then we were closing deals. So that's kind of how it started.
Oh my gosh.
It's wild.
So what was the breakthrough from like 0 to a couple million? What was the playbook that you put in place to get there?
So I wouldn't say like we follow a specific playbook. I wish it would have been like that. It's like, hey, let's do this play by play. But we had those teams, they were canvassing and creating leads, and Scott and I knew how to close solar deals. Like, we wouldn't have started this company if we didn't know how to sell deals. And so that's literally like, we just closed as many as we could. And then we actually we found full-time closers in each market. And at that point we were able to just like just be working in an office together on managing and growing. And so then that became much more like, it was like 6 months in, we were able to move out of my unfinished basement into our own office space. And that was
How did Andrea feel about that?
She loved it because like we didn't have a bathroom downstairs and it was freezing. So it's like winter and it's like, there's like, we're like, there's like one room.
You're accountant.
We're like, my poor like marketing
Bob
guy.
Cratchit down there.
It's seriously, they're like wearing coats. My marketing guy and my accountant guy. And then Scott and I were in this like one finished room. So they like come in and like, can we just get some heat for a minute? And so, so we're 6 months in and we get in our own office space and we were getting like, I think we're like probably 8 to 9 deals a week at this point where, 1 or 2 closers in Cedar City, 1 closer in northern or southern Idaho. And we were like, okay, we could see that where it could kind of go, and we could start building out official roles for each other. And that's kind of when Scott's like, okay, like I'll be CEO. I had crazy amount of time going on with my family and things going on there, and I was just naturally more able to handle sales guys, and so like we just kind of morphed into, I'll do sales, you do ops and CEO stuff, and so like we moved out my unfinished basement in our first place, and I feel like that's right when we were able to group and decide like, what should we do with this thing?
Tell me about you've shared your call with Alma Jepson quite a few times in an EO setting.
Yeah. This is where that happened, was when we finally got into our first space and we're in a conference room and we're like, what the crap do we do? Like, it's starting to kind of like snowball. We got employees, we've got accountant, marketing person, we've got all the stuff set up, and we're like, what do we do? And we're like, Scott's like, well, I had this cousin that I see at family, whatever they're called, the family reunions. And he's like, he just sold his company for like millions. Maybe he'd talk to us. And we're like, let's talk to him. So he like texts him right there. And literally then 5 minutes later, he's like, how about tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? And we're like, just blown away. We're like, why would this guy just come, in an instant come meet with us? And so he comes the next day. We spend like literally 4 or 5 hours in the conference room just picking his brain with Alma.
Oh my gosh.
Super grateful that he was able to spend that time with us. Like, it really kind of set our course of like the things we really wanted to do. And we just tackled them. So we came away with that conversation with 3 pieces of advice. The first one was, you have to get your vision, mission, and values down pat. He's like, that will become your North Star. And we spent some time talking about that. The second thing is like, you have to get a business coach. And we're like, okay. And the third thing, you have to join EO. And we're like, what the freak is EO? And he's like, it's this entrepreneurs organization. You can't like become the best entrepreneur that you can be without being a part of it. Like, you just have to. And we're like, okay. what do we got to do to join? And then we're like, who was your business coach? And he like talked about her for a while, and we're like, can you introduce us? Like, can we use the same one you used for 8 years and just sold your business for millions? Like, we want to use that person. Like, can we? And so, yeah, he made the introduction, and then we're like, holy crap, like, business coaches are expensive. And we're like, okay, well, if we want to like do this the right way, then let's do it. So we're like, we just barely started paying ourselves. Like, come on. Anyway, so yeah, we made that plunge.
Can we do a little plug for EO real fast? So you're the president of EO. Before we started, you said there's an event coming up.
Okay, yeah. So EO Entrepreneurs Organization, there's a little over 100 members here in Utah. Businesses that are doing $1 million or more in revenue. And then EO is a member-led organization, so it's a nonprofit. We meet together every month, and we go over what are the biggest struggles in your life, business and personal, and then like what are the best things, like things you don't really talk about with everyday conversations and things that really only other entrepreneurs understand. So it's like that support peer-to-peer group. Anyway, so I've been a member since Alma told us to join, and then have been serving on the board ever since. And so this year, it's the first year that I know of where we're actually doing like a public event where we're selling tickets to. And we have the founder of UGG coming, and we're doing it at the aquarium. So April 24th, he's going to come share his founder experience, his story of building UGG, selling UGG, and then we're going to do like an open coaching session where we're going to like coach a member in front of everybody so we can get to that raw, vulnerable stuff that everybody loves, that juicy, like what the freak's going on. And then everybody that are sitting at tables are going to get to go around and do experience shares around that struggle that gets brought up. It's going to be killer.
Cool.
It's going to be awesome.
April 24th?
April 24th, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. I'll shoot you guys the link so you can put it in the details.
Put the link in the bio. And another shout out to you for being the president. It is not an easy job it's one thing to be a president of a company where you're paying everyone. Like, yeah, it's difficult enough. It's another thing to be the president of a bunch of entrepreneurs
who are all volunteering.
And we're neurotic as entrepreneurs often. So hats off to you. It's a massive service that you're doing. Thanks for doing it.
Well, and thank you for doing it too. I know it's, we've been in the same shoes, so we know, how it's like. But it's an incredible organization. I wouldn't be where I'm at today for sure without it.
And your comment about Alma's suggestion of business coach, I worked with Rob, and he was amazing, and he was one of the inspirations of why I wanted to start Covalent. After Aspen, I looked back and thought, what were the biggest challenges and struggles for me, and specifically was building and aligning the right team. So that's why I started Covalent, to help companies
build the right teams,
build the right team, and align them behind the mission, vision, and values. Yeah,
that's a huge one. And I know now why Alma said you have to join EO. Like, that was one of his 3 things, because like literally you get into these groups of 8 to 10 entrepreneurs every month, and they help you see around corners where you haven't been, right? Like, you say, hey, I'm going through this right now, and they're like, oh, this is what I did, and they share their experiences. It's like, you wouldn't get that by just Googling, or it was just pure intellect and pure like opportunity to excel through crap when you're going to do it. And then the business coach, like, that's another angle of just helping you set the right structure and getting their full-time attention. So like EO is more there for the individual entrepreneur growth, and then as a business collectively getting on the same page, and then like using it as a catalyst and just setting the right things anyways, it was just instrumental. I'm really grateful that we got that, and we just followed that advice as much as possible.
So let's fast forward a couple of years. Take me to 2022. What is... sorry, give me 1 second. Let me frame the question before I ask it.
Do you want me to kind of get into like how we use the mission, vision, and values, and then how that helped us going
perfect.
through?
Yeah. So fast forward to 2022. Before this conversation, we talked about the culture that you guys were able to create at Skyline, and I'm curious what the role of the mission, vision, and values were in relation to the culture that you guys created, and how that helped you get to $35 million in revenue in such a short time.
Yeah. So we had, the mission was to empower 100,000 people, and that was like kind of like the goal. The big hairy,
a little pun in there.
Yeah. Right.
I love it.
And so it was like, okay, like why? And then, to create sustainable independence, and like, okay, so there's the purpose. And then we had these really cool values that we didn't want just like integrity or trust, respect. We wanted to create like values with stories that people could get behind and that were fun. And then those types of values were woven into that story. So like, for example, like, hey, Bob was one of our values, or does it come in red? Win, and then So it's like those types of values where there's a story behind it. People are like,
Tell me
what does that mean?
What's the story behind it? Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob. Okay, so when we were first starting, we had to find a CRM, and we found the CRM Solar Sales Tracker, and like they were a startup, so we're like, we're a startup, they're a startup, let's be startup together, we're gonna freaking crush this. And don't ever go with a startup for a CRM.
As an entrepreneur.
Yeah, don't ever start with a CRM that's a startup, because like they have, anyways, we had the hardest things. Like we wanted to do so many things and change so many things, and every day we were calling our representative Bob, his name was Bob. And so we're like, Bob, like, how do we do this? Or like, Bob, like, can you fix this? Like, this thing broke. And so it's just like, it's this perpetual, like, we wanted him to fix our problems instead of us figuring out a solution to fix the problem. So Hey Bob is all about the mentality of becoming a problem solver versus a victim.
I love it.
And so it's it's the growth mindset,
So
right?
ours was extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Your version was
Hey
extreme
Bob.
ownership.
So you got to Hey Bob it.
Hey Bob it.
So problem comes along, you got to Hey Bob it.
I love it.
And so the values like that, right? And so when the reason how we wove that into, like when we got our recruiting down and our systems dialed, like we were filtering people against these values by asking questions that presented them where they would tell us stories, and their stories, if we felt like that matched what these, like if they were a problem solver, not a victim, like we could see that in the questions we were asking. So that they became our filter. Our values became our filter, and we'd hire and fire by that.
Does it come in red?
Does it come in red?
Wait, I got to double click on that. You fired based on core value violations.
We would, if they weren't like a, and it was more so like we made decisions to like either get them out. We wouldn't say you're fired because of you didn't Hey Bob this, you know.
But that was the reason.
But like, yeah, we would start filtering people like the dude is just not a culture fit, and so like we need to like help them. We need to release them to be successful somewhere else, you know.
We need to release them. Tell me, does it come in red? What's that?
Does it come in red? My favorite color is red.
Okay.
And our
I
second.
don't know why I always thought you were a BYU guy.
Oh no, I'm just kidding. They're okay. I did graduate from the U though.
Skyline is blue, right?
Yeah, blue and gold.
Yeah, which is BYU colors ish.
But then so my favorite color is red.
Okay.
Has been since I was little. And it was green and then it always changed to red, but my grandpa always had a red car. And every time I'd go over to my grandpa's house and like we'd dial in the code of the garage and the garage would come up, I just like couldn't wait to see that red car. And so our colors for Skyline were red and gray and
for
white.
Skyline?
Mm-hmm.
No.
For Skyline Solar.
Oh, for Skyline Solar. That's Skyline High.
Yeah.
I love that you guys had company colors.
Yeah. And so like when we were in our conference room and we were buying our first set of like conference chairs, like it's like, okay, do we go all out on this like red thing? I'm like, so the story behind it is I can't remember who came into the room, but like, hey, so like what color should we get with conference chairs? And I asked the question like, does it come in red? Do they come in red? And so that just kind of catchphrase kind of took on from there. But it's more about like the passion behind, like, do you have the passion and the drive and the determination behind what you're doing? And it's like, because that's what also red means. The color red is like passion and determination and that. And so, yeah, that's kind of how that story came about.
We have one customer who has their value is complete commitment. Sounds similar to Does it come in red?
Does it come in red?
I love how you guys personalize those. So you guys had these values. Does it come in red? Hey, Bob, win. Because you freaking crushed me in golf. Was it Pebble Beach? Where did we play? Torrey Pines?
Torrey Pines.
Yeah. I'm really sorry that I don't know the difference between those two.
It's okay. They're both great golf courses.
It's got to be really painful for someone.
No, it's all good.
As great at golf as you. So how did those get you guys to $35 million?
I think it was when we were recruiting, it created this story and this brand that people wanted to be a part of, the vision, empowering 100,000 people, sustainable independence. Like it was just like the package. Oh, it's different. It's not like some regular, values on the wall that people hear. Like it just became this movement almost that people wanted to be a part of. And I think that's what really helped us create the culture, and that energy behind growth was palpable. And so when we were recruiting people, it just became easier to get people on board with that. And then when you have when you have a marketing system or a lead generation system that has like predictability behind how many sales it will spit out, you can almost build anything from that, right? As long as you can operationally fulfill on the opposite side.
And that's what you guys were able to create.
And we were able to have that for a while. And it's interesting because like when you get there, like for a lot of times sales was the issue. Like operationally we were just awesome, and we like couldn't, like we just needed more deals. And then when we were scaling operations and we had too much sales, like operations was the problem. And it was like 21 and 22 was like that perfect combination of like all of us in unity climbing together and the right amount of sales, and it was just like a dream. It was perfect. And yeah, it was just under 35 million. It was what our peak was. But yeah, we were like doubling and tripling almost every year, just going up into that point. It was just crazy. And the biggest like thing that helped us do that is instead of just being a sales only, is like we brought installation in-house. So we became a full house, like electrical contractor type installation company.
Gosh.
For solar systems only. And then when we were able to recognize all the revenue from a deal, not just the sales commission type from it, that's when it really blew up. And then, yeah.
Because you get the sale, you get the commission, you would...
The whole note is our revenue, basically.
Did you guys do the financing? Or you did the financing as well? Yeah. So you financed the deal,
we financed the deal. Yeah.
Holy cow.
We didn't have the financing in-house, but we would basically just we partnered with whatever banks would.
But you were a one-stop shop for these guys.
Yeah.
For the homeowners.
Yeah, and that was a great like business model at the time. And then towards the end, it was like almost to our detriment that we had it all in-house because we were married to it.
Tell me
So it's very interesting.
What was the first domino of like, oh, this is interesting, things are changing and not for the best?
The first domino, things that are changing, not for the best, was definitely when the interest rates just spiked, major. Our whole industry was built around the payment for solar being less than what someone's average bill was for their house. And so we were selling interest rate loans. We were selling base 25-year loans at like 1.9 or 0.9 rates. And so that payment was low. And the markets that we chose were really uncompetitive markets for that reason. But that also meant that the utility bills were also already lower than the like regular. And so we were already like $5-10 more a month than what average bills were, or a little bit less in some cases. And so that really was like the no-brainer to switch. And then once we were having to sell like $50, $60, $70 more per month, it was like, okay, now we have to have more leads to get even fewer deals. So that like our ad spend didn't go as far. We got fewer leads. And so it was just like this compression problem. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
we just started like, so now we're spending triple the amount of time to close even fewer deals. And now our pipeline in all these install areas that we had opened is getting lower and lower, and we don't have enough deals to support a full-time crew. So now we're like, oh crap, where do we close? Where should we not? Like, where do we have momentum? So we're just like using all of our data and all of our things that we've done over the 8 years to just survive. And so we're like closing down, moving all the ad spend to one area, and then it's like that's not going to be enough. We resize, we just went through 4 rounds of layoffs to try and figure it out. We offshored all of our setting team. We had a super dialed setting team. We were all virtually based here, in the United States. We had to offshore everything to try and get that cost down, that customer acquisition cost down again, because marketing was only going so far. And we did everything we could from a marketing standpoint to get cheaper leads. And then anyway, so like it was just this perfect storm, and we death by 1,000 cuts kind of a thing to try and rock it out. And then when we had to like take a serious look, our CFO came back from a couple week vacation. He did a 16-week forecast, which was always something he did. He did a 16-week cash flow forecast, which was a phenomenal tool. He had this crazy spreadsheet. He had this crazy spreadsheet that only like really he knew how to like put all the inputs in. It was gnarly. But we were like, oh my gosh, this is a 7-figure number that we're going to have to come up with 16 weeks from now. And we're like, and you know, going into, we'd already put in like $750,000. As it's going down,
3,500.
Exactly. It's like all the money that we'd made from the previous 2 years, we're like now like putting back. And so we're like, oh my gosh. So we're just helping this beast get smaller. And then at the same time, we just don't see an end. We're like, okay, if we put in this money that he's saying we need to put in, we would need to perfectly execute for the next 12 months. And we hadn't hit a goal for 12 months. So we're like, we could just get into a bigger hole, or, you know, it's like everyone comes into those moments where it's like burn the ship or not, you know? And we'd already had one of those burn the ship moments in 2019 when we had to, you know, like sink or swim. And I mortgaged my fourplex, and we took on cabbage into it loans, 30% interest rates, and we climbed through it one time before a cash crunch, but we had this huge pipeline. We knew we were going to be able to, you know, get through this. There was no way out of this one. And so we had to make that freaking really hard call to just say, okay, like if you're not committed and I'm not committed to like really come up with this money to like keep it going, then we got to close doors. And so like that was just really, because we were like so proud of the team we had. So like it was still like everyone was still fighting to keep it going. And we were a really transparent company. So like everybody knew what our profitability was all the time. Every month we had, here's our revenue, here's our profit, here's the goals. Like we were just transparent with that.
Will you talk through that conversation with Scott? Was it just you and Scott? Was it like a definitive moment in your mind, or was it like, hey, this is just the understanding and now we're moving in this new direction?
I think it was, you know, we had to come to Jesus talk. Like we'd had some cash calls, you know, almost, you know, 3 or 4 months before, and then one smaller one. And then it's like, okay, there's another big cash call. So it's like, we either put the cash in or we close doors. And so we were having that conversation. Neither of us had the amount of cash that we had, so it would have been involved of like us mortgaging our personal houses to like figure this out, or go and try and get someone to like lend us money, which no one really would, with seeing our financials going into this picture, right? And so it's like, it was just that call of like, okay, man, like I can't do it. You can't do it. And it was just like the somber of like, oh shiz, man. Like we gotta, you know, we took a hard look at what our pipeline was, and it's like, okay, if we install the rest of our pipeline, you know, shut down sales, shut down all these things, and we install the rest of our pipeline, like we might be able to break even coming out of this, maybe. But like, here's what we'd have to do. And it wasn't even close. Like we just barely finished our last few sales, so we're not even close to break even. And it was still like the lesser of the two evils. Like we would have either dug a, you know, multi-million-dollar hole, or like have this hole that we have left. And yeah, it was just like, it's an impossible choice, and we made the choice, one of the choices, right? 2 impossible choices. What do you do? Hang on to your baby or close it down? So it just kind of sucks. Yeah, but
Kyle, my heart's hurting, bro, because I know how difficult it is to start a company, and I know how tied my self-worth has been to Aspen, and how I've had to try so hard to disconnect my self-worth from Aspen. I wondered if you could talk through any of your learnings through the process.
I think for me, because there is all that, like when you create something from scratch and it's like, and it does good, and then you're like, it becomes a part of you. Like you do have to like mentally detach yourself that your business isn't you, your team isn't you. They're reflections of your values and your work and your, yes, but like, it was, Skyline became its own, like at that level and that scale, it's its own organization. Like it was running by itself without me for years. Like I wasn't a part of the executive team for the last like 3 or 4 years. We had a CEO, CFO, CRO, like they were a unified team as well. And I was like starting departments. And then for the last few years, I was the director of marketing. Like I had my own department and my own kind of like silo in my own business. And I think that's kind of when I started detaching myself away from the whole. But then as I had to come jump back into as we scaled down and have closed, I think it just emotionally, I just had to tell myself like, this isn't you. This is like, there's something you're going to get experience from. It's something that's for your own good in the future. It's hard to say that, but I had to like get that behind that belief that I'm learning a shiz ton from this. This is part of my, I call it my multi-million-dollar education. And it'll pay dividends in the future, just not the near future. And so that's kind of what, I'm behind. And anyways, so yeah, that's kind of where my mind's been. And it's a roller coaster when we first, like obviously just sad, depressed the first month. And then when you're dealing with all the crap of having to shut it down, you're even more like, ugh, this just sucks because you don't get paid to do this hard work. And you're seeing all the money go around everywhere else. And then you're just going to be last and you're going to be left with debt. So it's like, what do you do? So you have to just not. Anyways, I just had to separate myself. Like, this is just money. There's no, like, I got to separate the emotion. And so I kind of numbed that out and found solace and peace and joy in spending extra time with my family, thinking of and allowing myself to have creative wonder on what else could be next. And just tell myself, once I got brain space of this done, I'm going to have fun doing something else and I'll live.
I've had people on that have lost siblings and spouses, and I don't want to compare a person to a business. They're different entities, but I saw this research recently that some of the two biggest triggers to cause depression in a man are losing a child and being unemployed for extended periods of time. And those are different animals and different things to deal with. And I just hope you know how impressed I am with you.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
And how high of esteem I hold you.
I see both of that, right? Like I've had like, there's suck days and good days, right? Like there's days where you feel motivated to just get shit done. And then there's days where you're like, I don't want to work on closing another thing. I don't want to answer this bank call, or I don't want to do these things. Cause you're like, what's the point? You're like, it's just all dead anyways. But anyway, so it's like, I can totally see where that depression can come from like being unemployed. Like I literally just got approved for Medicaid. Like you have to be below poverty level to get Medicaid, qualify for Medicaid. But like, that's just because I haven't had a paycheck since like September, right? I have like savings, like from the good years that we had, like that's what I'm living off of. But like, anyways, like there's like a real like, holy crap, like I'm receiving help. I'm getting help. And I'm like, this is just like, whoa, okay. It's time to like move on to something else. But like, it's weird that was like a thing for me. It's like, cool. Like if it's there, it's a tool. I'm going to use it while I bounce back into another thing. But like, yeah, it was kind of scary not having insurance for a few months for my family. And like, we're all getting sick. I'm like, oh, what if someone breaks a bone? What if, like, and I start going down, and you just can't operate from a place of fear. Like, it's impossible. You don't want to. So you just have to not. And I feel like that's the reason why I'm bald. I had 2 kids in 30 days. And people are like, what? Why? Like, how did you have 2 different kids in the space of 30 days? I started my business and I had my firstborn within 30 days. And that's why I'm bald.
That's for the roller coaster.
And so it's like, and all the business stuff that comes from running and being a part of a scaling organization like that and a scale down, and I have 3 kids now. We just had one in April, and like, so I had to close business like a few months after my last kid was born. And so it's just been a lot. It's been heavy. And I think because of the entrepreneurs organization and being a leader there and having the presidency role and having to have that, like, has grounded me that I know that I'm more than my business. Like, I'm already leading in another organization and it needs me to provide direction. And like, it was so interesting when I should have said no to that. With everything going on in my life, I should have said no to serving there, but I didn't. And I think that was like so inspirational and like so important for my life right now. Like, it was meant to be kind of a thing, because I've had that as a source of like joy and a source of fulfillment for sure. Like, that's been like, okay, like I'm making progress in something else. I know that what I do has value and can add value. And so I think if I wouldn't have had that and been able to go through this same conversation over 100 times already, just explaining it to other members and getting their feedback and giving them giving me their support and love, there's like, that would have probably crushed me for sure.
I'm so grateful, Kyle, that you've been so vulnerable and going through this experience. And one thing that I'm so stoked on is to have you on in another 2 years, because so many of the greatest companies and inventions and creations that ever came about were on the heels of a situation like this, like the phoenix from the ashes.
Yeah.
And so I'm so pumped to see what the next 18 to 36 months holds from you, because I think it'll be nothing short. I'm confident it'll be nothing short of phenomenal.
I'm excited too. I wish I had more details of like what, but I've always wanted to buy a business. I want to own a business. I think I would suck at working for someone. I wouldn't suck. I would do a great job, but like internally I wouldn't be committed because I want to keep being an entrepreneur, right? And so, yeah, I think owning a business or buying a business in the future is for me. I'm learning. I bought this program of how to self-publish books, and I'm going to just do a few just to see how, not that like, I think that's going to be my next $1 million or whatever, but something that I think I'm passionate about, creating awesome content and something that can help people make better choices with. Anyway, so we'll investigate that. I'm also obsessed with roll-up ideas. Mm-hmm. Like having had because we were under contract twice to sell Skyline, and we couldn't get it to happen, which was also very like heartbreaking that we were at one point like so close to getting the value from what we had built, that we were like a platform company that someone could have come in and bolted on other solars and just like other solar companies and just flowed into our system. And that was like just sparked this in me of like, there are so many fragmented businesses out there, and there's some that just do it so well, but they're just like regionally or like they just operationally just haven't grown out. But like you go buy the same, like you buy like an auto mechanics shop that just does it really well. And then there's so many like just mom and pop shops everywhere. You go bolt on 10 or 15 of those, and then, you know what I mean? Like that roll up idea just is so, I'm just so curious about it. So that's something that I'll like at least go investigate and figure out what to do there. But like, it just, anyways, it's just exciting.
I'd love to be an investor if you let me in on your next idea, because I'm sure it will crush.
Well, it's like, yeah. And then maybe there's this business called Covalent. Covalent. That's a really cool name, actually. Sounds like a chemical bond of some sort. But
are you being facetious?
No, dude, I love it.
It's a covalent bond.
Yeah, the covalent bond. I think there's anyways. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities, and the right one will come up, and I'll just keep going on the dream.
Bro, this has been amazing. The last question we always wrap with is, if you're able to sit across from a former version of yourself, what would you say? And what is that former version of yourself? How old are they? What are they going through?
If I were to sit across, let me make sure I understand. If I were to sit across from a former version, so an earlier version of myself,
yeah,
and give them advice from today.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a point in time in the business where I let myself out of more control than I should have. Right? Like I should have fought for my role as an executive and kept that. So like I was a co-founder of the business. I let others stay in that role, and I let myself get out and stay out for a while. And then once push came to shove, this last year or so, I like didn't have the influence that I really needed to make things happen. So that was one thing. I think, and intuitively, like I had intuition a couple years ago to really fight for it, and I didn't. And I think the advice I would give myself is like really follow your intuition. Like you do get inspiration and you do get intuition. And the more you follow that intuition, the more you get, more intuition that comes. And I feel like there was a pivotal moment where I should have followed intuition a couple of different times. And I think that's what I'd probably say is I'm going to follow my gut more, and I'm going to also fact check it with things and systems and processes that I put in place. But I really am a heartfelt guy and a gut felt guy, and I do things intuitively. And I didn't listen to my intuition in some instances. So, yeah.
Kyle, this is amazing. Is there anything you wish I would have asked that I didn't? Any last thoughts?
Any last thoughts of like, no, I'm thinking I'm good, dude.
It's been
fun. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to share my story.
Thanks for being on it. We'll have you again in 18 to 36 months.
Okay.
To tell us how this next chapter is going.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, bro. It's a wrap. Thanks, Kyle.